What is energy healing? Energy healing is a way of focusing attention. And it's also, I would say, a system of understanding how attention, which is consciousness, interfaces with the fleshy human body. Because we've got the situation when a person comes to energy healing of the body isn't so well, and maybe some of the traditional methods that we're used to turning to weren't working to 100%. And there's a desire to get down to the seed or the core of the illness so that it doesn't ever come back. A lot of times, I mean, Western medicine is wonderful, but a lot of times Western medicine approach is to put a Band-Aid over the problem. Oh, I can give you this drug and it will make it so that you don't have the symptom anymore. But you know that like somehow that doesn't actually get rid of the cause. Right? So the thing about energy healing is it's all about going down to the seed, or the cause of the illness or imbalance. And the tool is attention or awareness. The tool is awareness. And how does awareness, what are those fine mechanics by which awareness interfaces with the physiology and produces an effect that's really helpful, that addresses that seed cause of illness in the first place in such a way that the illness doesn't come back, that it really digs down and gets to the core of it. So that's the basic premise behind energy healing, is that we're using our awareness to dig down to the core of the seed or source, the root of the illness. And then through an understanding of how awareness interfaces, or we could say how consciousness interfaces with the matter of the physiology, with the fleshy part, because our awareness does affect everything that it touches. So we're looking at those mechanics of how that happens. And then based on an understanding of those mechanics, how do we focus awareness in the most intelligent manner, in the most powerful manner to produce the most success in the healing process? And not to say that there aren't, one doesn't also enjoy the blessings of other types of healing technologies, herbs and procedures and Western medicine and all the blessings that come from approaching more from the surface of the issue. But it's always good to have that foundation in place, the deep fundamental understanding of what's really happening on the inside in we would say, the inner landscape of the field of consciousness that gave rise to that problem or issue in the first place. All right, so that's a description. The next thing that we're going to do, for those of you who've been with me, it's like, oh, you have this routine figured out. For the new people, the next thing we're going to do is go into a few minutes of silence. And the reason is that both the physiology, the physical fleshy body, and the awareness emerge from the source of creation. And the source of creation is an infinite, unbounded field of absolute resource, all the resources, wisdom and energy and intelligence and creativity, knowledge, understanding, all of that. And it's good to connect up with that first, like the highest first, right? We want to go right into the source of creation first, and then from there, the healings come. And from there, we have like a sturdy foundation for doing the healing work. So I'm going to ask you to close the eyes, and we'll take about 3 minutes of silence. And don't mind the time, because I'll keep an eye on the time and let you know when about 3 minutes is up. And then I'll ask you to open the eyes. And when I do, be sure to take a minute or so to come out of that silence, because the more time we take to emerge from the silence within us, the more of the value of that resource we bring with us into the material level, and like you could say, the thinking level of the mind. It would be very nice for us all to sit in silence together And of course, this is optional. You know, if you're having dinner, enjoy your dinner. But for those who would like to join me for the silence, let's close our eyes. All right. Let's take a moment and then slowly open the eyes. I'm going to say a prayer of gratitude now, and then we will go into today's healing session. Thank you to the source of creation for being everything, for being each of us, and for this great healing collective represented by everyone who's here for this webinar, live webinar, either in real time or we'll be seeing it after the fact. Even through the web of life and the field of all life around us, all those expressions of life that are not in a human fleshy body, but are here as part of our collective. Thank you for the whole universe. Thank you for the precious bridge that connects the unmanifest, silent, eternal ocean of pure consciousness with its expressed form as the great manifest field of creation. Thank you for our hour. May our hour today bring the highest blessings to everyone here. May we work efficiently. May every impulse of intelligence that comes forth be useful and meaningful to each one of us. Thank you to all of you for your presence and making it possible for me to be in service, which is my great delight to do. I'm so grateful. All right, I'm ready. Okay, so the topic of today's session is called Healings for Truth and the Filter of Perception. And I have to say, about usually after the last webinar, I spend a couple of weeks thinking about the upcoming webinar, and I get downloads, and I have lots of aha moments related to the upcoming webinar. But I have to say, for this webinar, that started long before the last webinar. It started at least a month, maybe a month and a half ago. I started noticing information coming in about today's webinar, today and tomorrow's webinar. It's the same topic. And I thought, this must be a rather heavy subject. And I realized it is a heavy subject. The subject of truth is a very big subject. It's the sort of subject that philosophers over the centuries, for many, many millennium, have been discussing, right? Truth. And of course, we have ways of organizing truth so that it's more digestible. So there's like subjective truth and objective truth and collective truth, individual truth, universal truth, lots of ways to organize the truth. We can think of its organizational structure in relation to Dharma, because Dharma is that, just very briefly, that's on my knowledge base if you want to read anything about the topic of Dharma, but Dharma traditionally has 4 legs, and one of them is truth. And interestingly, these 4 legs are the tools that we use to navigate challenges in our lives. And in some times in the history of creation, all 4 of the legs of Dharma, truth, compassion, you could say, or love, mercy, forgiveness, those types of feelings, purity, cleanliness, purity, and the ability to know when to let go and when to not let go. So that element of letting go, essentially. So those 4 in some times in history, you can use any of them in any degree to handle any problem. But that's not the case in the time that we're living right now. In the time we're living right now, it's possible to mess up. It's possible to make a mess out of something that's already got the potential to be a mess by using too much of these three values. Only the leg of truth at this time has the potential to be used in basically any situation, and have a beneficial, uplifting, evolutionary effect, even if the truth comes in an inconvenient way, even if it's something that people don't want to listen to or hear about. It's okay. The truth will still bless. It still blesses. Of course, the other three legs of Dharma are very useful to combine with the truth. I am just having such an aha moment. Thank you, everybody. So one of the things that I've said many times in the past is that these three legs of Dharma, compassion, purity, and letting go, have to be yoked to or combined with the leg of truth in order to be effective tools right now, at this time, the way the laws of nature are at this time in history, to be for you to gain success. So, it's possible to be like too loving and too compassionate and thus enable people to fail, or it's possible to be so obsessively, compulsively clean and perfect, and every single rule has to be followed down to every single tiny detail that one ends up being, following through life in a kind of a sort of restricted manner. And it's possible to be so letting go of everything that one is actually, not doing oneself a favor, right? You end up in a states of discomfort because you let go of everything that you needed. So discrimination and discernment are required to go with these. But as all of you are probably aware, truth itself is a bit under attack. It's a little shaky at this time in history, right? I mean, I'm not trying to fault or blame anyone or anything, but the fact is that with the advent of the internet, it's harder for us, isn't it? It's harder for us today to, especially with things like, what do they call that? Deep fake, or Chat GPT, which just came out, or AI, it's possible to see things on the internet that look so real and they're totally not, right? So it's really easy to get faked out today on the internet. So we could say the truth is a little bit under attack, that maybe attack is too strong of a word, but that it's harder now today to figure out what's truth and what's not truth. I think that's the fundamental thing. And also because there's just such a tremendously impossible to navigate through volume of information on the internet, like just getting to the facts and figures sometimes can be a challenge because there's just so much to wade through. So it just occurred to me that in order to strengthen truth, we need the other three values. So it's not just that truth strengthens the other three values, but the other three values also strengthen truth. That was the aha, right? Because, for example, if the compassion element is strong, and we're going to go a lot more into detail of this in today's session, but the compassion element is strong, it tends to lead to more of an intuitive filter of understanding truth. And if the purity or cleanliness factor is strong, it can come in and help one filter through the volumes and volumes and volumes of information that are on the internet. But if you kind of have like a sort of a neat, clean little line between what you're trying to find, the information you're trying to extract from the internet, and the place where that information is held in its purity, right? Then it's a little easier, and so forth, right? Austerity, what to keep, what to let go, which facts are facts, and which facts are not facts, that kind of thing. So It's a process. But it occurs to me that the important thing about Dharma, I've talked for years about Dharma having these four legs and how truth is the only one we can really depend upon. But I realize that the real value of Dharma is taking it as a wholeness, because we are bigger than all of the mental and emotional constructs that we use, and beliefs and attitudes and expectations and all that we use to navigate through our world. Dharma as a whole, the whole of Dharma, the complete story of Dharma. What is that complete story? The complete story of Dharma is experienced when awareness settles down. Instead of looking at the parts of Dharma up at the surface, we settle down and we look at the body of Dharma. And by looking at the body of Dharma, which is those four values together, and then allowing the awareness to settle down closer, closer, closer to the source of creation, we find that Dharma has an energy signature. It has a presence. It has a unique quality to its nature. And Dharma is found in all parts of the universe. It is one of those great universal forms. And you've heard me talk before about how the causal level, that very fine level right near to the source of creation, is made up of regions, and the regions tend to nestle inside each other, right? So they're big regions and smaller regions, but the nestling process at that level is, it transcends the ability of the mind and intellect to understand the way space and time work, right? Because the laws of space and time don't really come into play until the awareness is at denser, more concrete levels, more concrete levels of creation. So at the very finest level, the laws of space and time are like superfluid. You could say they're superfluid. So the really, really big forms, and we can think of those as universal devas, right? Or sometimes in some systems of understanding, we can think of them as the gods. That's another way to look at them. But those regions that are big, that are universal big, they're big regions. And that what we find is that those forms, and Dharma is one of those, that is also found inside the small regions. So the big is found inside the small, and the small is then understood or experienced as embracing the big. We are small things in the universe, right? We're like little, I'm leaning on a little truth here that I hope is universally held among all of us, that we are so big. We're only so big. We're only so big. Our little planet's like a little speck in our galaxy, and our galaxy is just a little speck amongst all the galaxies. So we're little, but our awareness is pure source energy, and it embraces the great universal forms. We embrace Dharma with our awareness. We can bring in, right? Truth, compassion, purity, innocence, purity, what to let go, what not to let go. And appreciate and value and nourish that great universal value with our awareness, which carries all the qualities of the source of creation with it: eternal, infinite, unbounded, absolute, pure consciousness, pure being. Consciousness is such a lovely quality. It's such a lovely thing. completely within the range of everyone's access. We can all access consciousness. We're all conscious. We all have awareness. From day one, we focus it around wherever it needs to go. We're completely masters at focusing awareness or consciousness. So we are vehicles. We are vehicles for the divine source, unmanifest, eternal divine source of creation, to penetrate this universe. And sometimes, like in our modern world and science, and I was referring to AI and different things, we penetrate the material level of the universe. But sometimes we can choose to penetrate the subtle levels of the universe. And that's where we find all these structures of creation have a presence deep down at that junction. Or I'm pointing to my background, by the way. For those of you who are new, the water in my picture represents the ocean of being, of source material. And the sky part of my picture, there's actually, I think, a mountain up there. But anyway, you get the idea that above the water represents the material ocean and field of material expression. Awareness. This is the place, this is the spot of focusing awareness where we find the source, cause, or seed of imbalances. We can see them clearly, but we also have access to, because we're so close to the source of creation, we have access to the resources. And I would say the potential to support evolutionary transformation at the root of this, at the root of the material level of expression. We could say the most material levels up here at the surface, and then it's a little bit more abstract, a little bit more abstract, a little bit more, at some point around in here, we kind of are no longer, it's so abstract when it's no longer constrained by space and time, right? We're saying that, and then deeper, 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 deeper. And then there's a level of the finest abstract. It's kind of a power spot. It's a place where human awareness can go. That puts you at the switchboard of nature's functioning. All the laws of nature that are responsible and that guide the way the material world shows up, including our precious bodies, they reside down, down, down into those subtle levels. And when our awareness goes down, down, down into those subtle levels, then we have access to those laws of nature. And Dharma is a kind of law of nature. And it's just, it's got qualities to it that are, I want to use the word fierce, but I would say fierce, the way we normally think of fierce, like scary fierce, isn't quite, more like powerful, more like powerful. English, you can see already that what I'm doing is I'm just describing to you what we are doing as a collective, essentially. I'm not doing something, you're doing, we're all doing it. And my job, because I'm the one that the camera's aimed at me, right? The microphone's in front of my face. So I'm the one describing. But sometimes English words, being by nature bound into space and time, can fall short a bit. But that's okay, because we're talking about truth. And when it comes down to it, you do know the truth. You know the truth. Deep inside, we all know the truth. And when I was walking with my family today, and they were saying, well, do you have a plan for today's webinar? I'm like, well, I kind of like to let the group determine the direction of the conversation, at least to a certain degree. Because it's more interesting for me to bring the information out in the immediate moment in a way that's actually meaningful to you than to come in with some preconceived idea. But there was a point that came up, and that was the difference between truth and the truth. That the truth, with a the in front of it, is usually reserved for a sort of spiritual or religious truth. Did I say that right? I have my husband's helping me. He's right over there. Yeah, so it's, you know, and when it comes to the truth, like a religious truth, then depending on who you talk to, that's going to be slightly different, right? If you talk to, well, I could rattle off names of different religions, but the point is that there are differences from one religion to another. And the conception of what is the truth from one religion to another can be slightly different because individuals are coming at it from different angles, obviously, or we could say the body of the religion that's built up around truth, you know, has built up differently in different parts of the world over the long course of time and so forth. So that's not the kind of truth that we're talking about today. The kind of truth that we need to have access to in order to do effective energy healing is your essential truth. It is direct personal access to the source of creation, which, as I mentioned before, is qualityless and unbound. And so, unlike the truth, religious truth, which exists within the confines of boundaries and limitations and beliefs and so forth, your essential truth is absolute. It's the same truth that was here long before you even came into this world as a human being, before there even were human beings, before there even was an earth. It's the very big truth. But I can't call it the truth because that would be religious, right? So we're just calling it truth. But our bodies are the instrument or the vehicle that anchors us to the world of boundaries and limitations and provides a launching point or a perspective for understanding the essential truth. Also, let's just see. So question, I usually save all the questions for the very end, but I often run out of time to answer all the questions. And such a beautiful question just came in. I would like to address that. It says, it seems fundamental to be firmly anchored to wholeness, which is the source of creation, in order to be optimally discerning. Can we do a healing to be steadfastly grounded? So I'd like to say first about discernment, because it's a great question. It's a wonderful question. And yes, we can do a healing. Let's do a healing. But I wanted to say about discernment. Discernment requires going in and I would say like using the mind and intellect to put experience into perspective. So the grounding is part of the story, but the other part of the story is shining the light of perspective on whatever is the experience of the moment. And that perspective comes from wholeness. And what it means is that every experience and every moment is nestled into a continuum of all moments that came before and all moments that come after. And in order to place one's awareness in a position to have maximum discernment regarding like this moment right here, what happens is awareness spreads out and it understands this moment in terms of everything that was before and everything that comes after. And it's that placement of the awareness in the present moment that provides the context for understanding the present moment or discerning the highest level of knowledge that one can discern regarding the present moment. It comes from Vedic science, that. Vedic science, so ancient, that if there's a moment when discernment is required, stepping into the moment and then taking into consideration the whole picture is what provides the context to allow the flooding of all that information to come right into the mind and the brain and the understanding. It's a big down. It's like, it's a way you can place your awareness to get a big download. Just saying. Healing for being steadfastly grounded. Okay. So grounded, and I'm reframing the question just a little bit in order to kind of get to like extract more information here. But thank you for placing it up here so nicely and succinctly. I really appreciate it. Grounded means grounded in wholeness. And that means wholeness integrated into the parts. It means the parts of self maintain their boundaries. They maintain the fact that they are separated, right? My hairs are all separated from one another. If they weren't, I'd look like I was wearing a hat, a very funny shaped hat, right? Okay, so the relative material field of creation, the boundaries have to be maintained. But at the same time, wholeness integrated into and present within the boundaries. And so that's that process that happens of the boundaries forming and then wholeness integrating into the boundaries. So the boundaries, each little boundary says, oh, but I am the light of the divine, but I am the light of the divine. And they all know this, but we are the light of the divine, right? All the little pieces are the light. It happens up at the surface. It happens down at the finest abstract. And to appreciate and understand it, I should say the source or the root of the process is down at the finest abstract. So we bring awareness down, down, down into that finest abstract gap. We could say the gap between the unmanifest and the manifest level of creation. And there what we see are like ripples on the surface of the water. Each ripple is rising up, filled with the light of divine being. And as soon as it can carry that light no further, it falls back into the ocean. So ripples rise up and fall and up and fall and up and fall and up and fall. And every time the ripple falls back into the wave of expression, falls back into the ocean of being, it is rejuvenated, reborn. Because what's the mechanics that's happening? The wave rises up and it's full with the light of being. And then somehow the form of that wave is insufficient to completely be like, to be the perfect vehicle that can hold that divine light. Totally, it loses it. Basically, it loses it. The form at some point loses it. Our nervous systems are the filter, right? In our bodies, our nervous systems are the filter for our awareness, right? And senses of perception. And our physical bodies have boundaries and limitations. And the nervous system spends more time filtering out information than it spends taking in information. So necessarily, In the creation of the manifest universe, the whole manifest universe, the forms are always going to butt up against their own limitations. That's the nature of form. It rises up. It's like, oh, I'm full of being. I'm full of being. And then at some point, it's like, my body just is like filled up with being now. Thank you. And being's like, I want to manifest higher. I want to manifest further. And the body's like, give me a break. And so at that point, an evolutionary, the turn in the evolutionary cycle occurs, and the physical form folds back into the source of creation to be reborn, more refined, more integrated with divine expression, going through the cycle of rising up and going, oh, I'm feeling full, and I'm blissful, and I'm full of grace, and I'm full of love, and then going, oof, I've just hit a limit. And then going, okay, well, then I have to go home, and going home. So that cycle of rising up and going home, and rising up and going home, and think of them as ripples on the top of the water. There are millions of billions of trillions of gazillions of these rising up, like just in the deepest levels of creation, and rising up in the little bit bigger levels of creation, and rising up in even bigger levels, and all the way up to physical human. Like, this is what we do. We go through this cycle again, throughout our whole lifetimes, right? Every time the form says, oh, I reached a limit, I can't, I feel as if my physical form is insufficient as a vehicle for the divine light of being. Then the divine says, okay, let's go back and do some purifying, right? The leg of purity, purifying and integrating. What are we going to keep? What are we going to throw? As the experience, the form's experience of I'm full, oh, I hit a limit. Then it's like, oh, I have to go home, and I have to kind of rebuild myself. Then what it does is, as it starts to dive back into the infinite ocean of grace and bliss and being, can only carry with it those aspects that are well aligned with divine nature, with one's divine nature. So a lot of letting go happens on the inward stroke of that cycle of evolution. That cycle of evolution is the cycle by which the divine itself evolves in this universe. It's evolving in every single point in the universe by going through this cycle again. And do you notice, and this is part of the beauty of nature, I think, do you notice that you go through the cycle, we go through these cycles, but we don't lose our life. I mean, at some point one loses one's life, but right now we're going through the cycles again like that. But nature is so gentle. It's so compassionate, right? It's so discerning that the process is able to unfold in a way that allows the physiology and the nervous system and the being to somehow navigate the cycle and come back again fresh, essentially like, okay, so I messed up, but I learned something useful, and I'm stepping forward now to face my life again, to face the world again, only from a platform of greater flexibility and stability and understanding, greater wisdom, greater fullness of being, compassion. We could say the grace of God. The grace of God permeates that process and allows us as humans, little humans, with all of our foibles, it allows us to traverse that cycle right along with the divine, which is traversing it in every point in creation, in a way that doesn't utterly destroy us. Amazing, right? Amazing. So coming back to the question, can we do a healing for being steadfastly grounded? The principle here is that what we want to ground is the part of ourself that shows up in the form of boundaries and limitations. Because your consciousness is already consciousness. Your awareness is already source material. But we're working within the confines or the boundaries and limitations of the body. So what we're really looking for is stability and adaptability in the nervous system. It's that combination of being able to know what to let go and what to keep, right? When to let it go, when to hold on. Which part of oneself is so nicely aligned with divine intent that it actually acts as a vehicle that helps. It helps the inward stroke of experience, and it supports a nice, deep, luxurious, rejuvenating dive into the source of creation, so that as awareness emerges from that source, the nervous system is better able to function as a vehicle or an instrument of the light of the divine in this world. I see a lot happening in the heart energy center area. And even a lot of times in these sessions, we work with the big centers, the head center, the heart center, the gut center. And I kind of thought I might work with that today, but I really see this happening in the heart chakra, in the smaller, like this little center that's inside the big Mahamurma, the bigger center. And what it looks like to me is that the connection between oneself as an individual and oneself at a universal level is integrating. Integration is the principle that allows the material level of self to align as perfectly as possible with wholeness. It's integration. Basically, wholeness is integrating into the parts. It's integrating into the boundaries, into the physical form. What stabilizes that process is a reforming or redefinition of oneself. That as long as we identify ourselves as separate from that eternal ocean of being, then the physical form tends to show up as insufficient. And it is the moment of realizing, oh, I am that the boundary is released sufficiently at a deep level, at the seed level, right? Where it tends to sit and influence how the physical form shows up. It's at that level of letting go and realizing, oh, I am that the seed reforms itself. And what that requires is identifying with the source of creation rather than being gripped by identification with the limitations and boundary. You notice I didn't say not being identified with the limitations and boundary. This is a really important point. I said it before, but I need to say it again from a slightly different angle because it's so important and it's so, I would say, overlooked or misunderstood. I feel it in our modern times and with a lot of the sort of modern spiritual paradigms that we tend to work with. That process of who one thinks one is, the process of taking that point of self-definition and incorporating the eternal, absolute, unmanifest, unbounded source of creation has to happen in a way that does not belittle in any way the boundaries. In no way does it make light of the individual side of self. So it's both. It has to be both. And it has to be both married, because it's easy to say, well, okay, all this material world and creation is just Maya. My body is just Maya. It's really nothing. It's all nothing. I grew up thinking I was this person with this name, and I lived in this family, and I held these occupations, and I did this, that, and that's all nothing, because I'm just the self. I'm just wholeness. Well, wholeness is all this. It's all this, and it's the evolution of the source of creation is glorified. It is expressed through the marriage of all of those little details of self coming into a harmonious union with the source of creation. So the answer is, it's really all of that. It's all of the individuality. It's all of the body. It's all of the details. And it is all the source of creation. You are all of this. And we know our bodies are little. They're little specks in the universe, and that's okay. That's okay. That's how the body was meant to be. But we don't want to throw it in the trash when we're enjoying the bliss of realizing that we're wholeness. Like that would, that would be like, it would kind of ruin the fun. It would ruin the whole reason why we're doing this thing in the first place. I hope that helps answer the question. It's a great question. Can we do a healing for steadfast, grounded? We do a healing for the nervous system to become both stable and adaptable, and to embrace the entire picture. So now, thanks. It's good your question was kind of simple, because it lets me come back. Now we focus in on the intelligence of the nervous system. Everyone's nervous system has its physical form and also has its energetic form. It also has an energy signature that defines it. And the different parts of the nervous system process truth differently, right? We experience truth differently in the head area than from the heart area or the gut area. The whole nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, all the wonderful workings of all the little organs in the brain, all the little regulating organs, and all the sensory cortices, and all the tremendous network of connections. What do they say? There are more connections in the human nervous system, and even I think maybe the brain alone, than there are stars in the galaxy. And there are trillions of stars in the galaxy. So that's a lot. Are there hundreds of trillions? I'm not sure. No, we don't know. We don't know how many trillions there are, but there's a lot. And every connection is an expression of integration, right? Because this is the story of what the divine is doing, is it sits in its unmanifest wholeness, and it rises up, and it creates forms, and then the forms become more and more integrated. They keep rising up and flopping back in, and rising and falling, and rising and falling, and rising and falling. And with each rise and with each fall, those forms emerge again from the source of creation more integrated. They emerge again more perfectly formed as a optimal vehicle for the divine to express itself in creation. So those waves, that oscillation that occurs there, it occurs within the whole nervous system, with each connection between all the trillions of connections in the nervous system, from one nerve cell to the next. And each wave is a wave of bliss. It's a wave of the divine manifesting in us, in our bodies. Every connection is a wave of bliss. That's a lot of bliss. That's a lot of bliss, waking up the center for creating dopamine in the brain and the pathways through which that dopamine floods into the rest of the body and the brain. And how that flood opens up the potential wherever it goes. Especially in the thalamus. The thalamus is the little organs kind of deep inside the head. A little bit, I think, in front of the pineal gland, and it's bigger than the pineal gland. I think some people have their pineal glands well defined and identified. The thalamus sorts. It sorts all the impulses of perception that come in, especially during waking consciousness, and makes order. The thalamus makes order of experience, of your experience. And the orderliness allows the system to imbibe truth. So the light of the grace of the divine, waking up and lighting up the thalamus, increases the potential of the thalamus to function as a filter for higher levels of truth, greater levels of truth, more profound types of truth, more powerful truth, more powerful knowledge and experience. It's as if the senses of perception, particularly the sensory cortices, they feed into the thalamus, but this opens up the relationship between the thalamus and the senses of perception, and it allows more of a two-way conversation to go on. And this thalamus speaks back to the senses of perception and says, here, you can find the light of the divine through every sensory experience. How to find the light of divine in every sensory experience, even the worst of them. Even the worst of them, because the worst of them arise at that moment when the absolute has risen up as a form and the form reaches its limit. That's the moment when we have to learn lessons and face challenges and issues arise and so forth. And it's at that limit point that the greatest potential for restructuring oneself as an ever better vehicle for the grace of divine love and being in this creation. That's the point, as unpleasant as it could sometimes be. And we know that in this world, sometimes it's not pleasant, it's not comfortable, and it's not fun. But that's because the organizing power that comes from the source of creation, that's responsible for this manifest creation, cares more about evolution than about comfort. If there's a choice, if a choice needs to be made between comfort and evolution, evolution always wins. So what that means is that at that moment, right, you reach the limit, one leans into the evolutionary value that is the infinite evolutionary potential that is present in that moment. Whatever is the discomfort, the universe doesn't just act randomly, ever. Its job is to create a situation or condition that leads you to understand what is the source of that experience that you're having. What is causing it? What is the part of you? What is the piece of you that needs to fold back in again? That's ready to fold. It means that part is ready to fold. This is giving rise to a shift in the autonomic nervous system, because the autonomic nervous system is taking instructions from the regulating mechanisms in the third ventricle of the brain that's right next to the thalamus. The thalamus butts up right next to that. The autonomic nervous system has choices to either freak out or to become elated at the prospect of tremendous personal growth and evolution. The autonomic nervous system has choices. I'm seeing people in our session tonight who have some immune system issues. And this is also a great healing for that, because it's the autonomic nervous system that talks to the immune system and tells it whether it should fire off and go crazy and start attacking all over the place or not. Or if it's underfunctioning, if it's underperforming, and it needs to rise up and be stronger and protect you better. Balance. The awakening and enlivenment of balance between stability and adaptability in the nervous system allows the nervous system to be a more perfect vehicle for the absolute balance of divine being. So for our dear anonymous attendee who had that wonderful question, the light medicine produced by the body in every part of the body is the energy of balance that speaks to the nervous system, especially the autonomic nervous system, and allows the nervous system to function in a way that the balance is so discerning, it is so fine. The balance between stability and adaptability, right, which are kind of like opposites. The balance is so delicately measured out that the experience is the experience of sitting steadfastly, being stationed steadfastly in the source of creation, in the present moment. You can do it. And it's like that's a flag. In the present moment is a flag that reminds you, until it becomes so like second nature, that just the ability to go, oh wait, I'm in the present moment, is enough to set the system back into that state of balance. So what that means is that the experience is created in the system, and as soon as the experience is created, the nervous system modifies itself and adapts around the experience, and then a kind of a support system is created within the field of the mind and body and the intellect and mind, intellect, senses of perception, that any moment that it's lost, one just remembers, oh yeah, in the present moment. And then it's back, you're back. That's all you have to do. And you can do that so fast. You can do that even if things around you are moving very quickly. And it's like a power or a power tool. I was going to say a power or a tool, but it's like a power tool for providing yourself with the resources required to step up to even the most challenging situations with grace. Awesome question. Let's see what other questions there are, because I see our time is already now, we're going along. How do we know where we are, where our awareness is in relation to the causal level and not just in thought? Oh, that's a wonderful question. That is really a wonderful question. It's a really valid question, because the truth is that the whole field is permeated with consciousness and awareness. The whole field is permeated with awareness. But, and in this lifetime, we are accustomed to sending our awareness out through the senses of perception and taking in the world. So there's a sort of a natural habit of projecting or sending the awareness out into the material. And to get to the causal level requires an inward turn of awareness. As soon as the awareness starts to turn inward, the great inner landscape opens up. And it's beautiful and amazing. The causal level itself. Now, you should know that I have used English words to try to describe that inner landscape for all of you in a way that relates to things that you already know, so that you can understand it as easily as possible. But the truth is that ocean of consciousness within all of us is quite beyond words. That's the truth. That's the truth. And I remember saying to my husband, I was going to start this session, which I obviously didn't, with that saying, the truth is one, the wise know it by many names. So there are many different ways of calling the causal, especially the deeper you get, because at the grosser, maybe the word gross, my kids say, don't use the word gross to describe the more concrete levels. Use the word more concrete, because gross is like, for the younger generation, it's like, ew, gross, but anyway, but it just means more manifest. Very easy to define where you are, like in space and time. I'm sitting in my living room and it's 8:38, easy. But it's a lot harder to define one's absolutely precise position as we go to more and more abstract levels of creation, because the whole field lets go of boundaries and limitations, and everything becomes more like fluid. So the causal level is a very kind of, it's a very fluid level of self. How do you know? The easiest way to get there is this. The easiest way is to put hands over the heart and just feel into your heart intelligence. That's the easiest way to kind of find your way into the causal level of creation, because it is an endless ocean of feeling, basically. It's an endless ocean of feeling, of impulses, of nuanced feelings. Resonations of divine being showing up within very, very delicate boundaries. For years, I kept a water bottle with me so that I could give you the water bottle demonstration, but I don't tend to keep it. All I have is my cup. I can't do the water bottle demonstration with my cup. But the causal field is divided up into regions or spaces, and the light of divine being moves into those spaces and becomes confined within the space. And it hums or vibrates within that space. And because of the boundaries or limitations of the space, the light of divine being hums differently in different spaces. I used to teach musical instruments, especially the wind instruments, right? So trumpets, trombones, baritones, flutes, clarinets, saxophone, those types of instruments. And they all work on this premise. Even drums do, really, because if a drum is like a contained space and you hit on the surface of the drum, and the shape of the drum acts as a resonating chamber that causes the sound to have a certain quality to it. And the divine being is quality-less, but when it gets into those spaces, it takes on specific qualities. And these qualities hum. They hum together. They're like energy frequency resonators, and the sounds hum together and they interact together to give rise to specific laws of nature. And these laws of nature move into the denser levels, the more concrete levels of creation as more specific forms. Then they start to move, once the two hums get together and they start humming together and create dun, 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 dun. And they have different types of relationships are formed, right? By different types of tones. I don't know. I can't do the Tibetan tritone singing, actually. I never practiced that. Otherwise, I could probably, with my one single voice, give you 2 or 3 pitches at the same time. But you get the idea that we feel here through the heart energy center, what those humming vibrations of creation are. That's the easiest way to do it, that I know. There's another way to do it, and that is to perform action out of love. Because action makes you think about what you're doing, especially if it's an act of service for someone else or an act of service to the world or whatever. You have to think, you have to discriminate, you have to use your intelligence and creativity to be able to do an act of kindness for someone else or for the world in a way that actually really truly benefits them. And when that action is performed in a space, in an inner space of love, this stretches the capacity of the senses of perception to stay anchored in the world of boundaries and limitations, but also to start to feel down. The love causes while the action is going on internally, to feel those subtler, more nuanced levels of creation at the same time. And it actually causes neurological transformation in the senses of perception and the way they interface with the brain. Devotion, right? Love and service produces a condition in the body that refines perception and allows the individual to appreciate and perceive the nuance that's within material experiences. You can, and it's free. It's free. So you can do that. The Milky Way. Oh, thank you. Here we have, my dear husband says the Milky Way contains between 100 and 400 billion stars, and I thought it was trillions. Please forgive me. But anyway, it's still a lot. And I still stand by my claim, because I know I read it somewhere reliable in the past, that there are still more neural connections in the brain of a single human than there are stars in our galaxy. It's a lot. Thank you, my dear. Okay, regarding time, the Hawaiian language has an interesting expanded version. Past is the time before or in front of, and future means the time after or behind, which gives an orientation such that we face the past confidently, interpreting the present and backing into the future. Oh yes, that makes sense. Guided by what our ancestors know and do, a continuing gratitude for the gift of life. That is lovely. That makes so much sense. Thank you for sharing. Yes, the past is a time before or in front, because the past has already happened. It's kind of set. What they say, hindsight is 20/20, right? That you can look to the past and you can say, these are the patterns that I see, and this is the way my ancestors understood reality, and this is what happens. And the future, it's kind of like we're backing into it, because we sort of don't know exactly how the future exactly is going to unfold. we don't have that same level of 2020 vision with the future that we have with the past. It's beautiful. I love that. So it's like a concept, kind of like you're backing into the future. You don't know what it's, each step, you're just like in the present moment, stepping like that. And like, I hope I didn't step in a hole. It's a beautiful point. Thank you. I love that. Thank you, everyone, for the great questions that came in today. I'm looking at our time, speaking of time, past and future, and I see that we've come to our hour. So I think out of respect for everyone's bedtime, we'll stop now. But it was really fun to go on this little adventure with you today, and for the healings and for the amazing questions. And for those of you who will be with me to, oh, thank you. I'm so glad you're here. Speaking of putting hands over the heart, my love. For those of you who will be with me tomorrow, I look forward to being with you, and I expect we'll probably get to see some Europeans with us tomorrow, which will be very lovely as well. And in the meantime, I wish everyone a good sleep, a good night, a good, deep, inebriating, healing sleep in this night tonight. And that we may come at the topic of time tomorrow, or excuse me, the topic of truth tomorrow, with even more richness of understanding and even more healings and all that is good in the healing webinars. And again, I'm just so grateful to everyone here for being a blessing in my life. Thank you for creating the environment and the context that allows me to go deeply and to really look at what's happening at those finest levels. So thank you so much, everybody. I'll see a lot of you tomorrow. And for those I don't see tomorrow, we will send you the recording of tomorrow's session anyway, just because the sessions, one follows the other, and it would be nice for you to have everything. Thank you. See you all soon. Bye-bye.